For the longest time, my biggest claim to fame was that I had once shared an elevator ride with famed Cleveland Browns quarterback Bernie Kosar. Kind of an anticlimactic story, even when I am the one who gets to tell it. I had probably been in high school, maybe, and happened to be in downtown Cleveland on the night they light up all the buildings with Christmas lights shortly after Thanksgiving, and lots of people bustling through the city. I happened to be going back into one of the buildings, getting on a busy elevator. My family's there with me, and coming toward the elevator doors, a set of hands reaches in and he goes, "You have room for one more." And of course, a crowded elevator full of people who are all vaguely Cleveland Browns fans, or at least know Bernie Kosar. Well, of course, they all make room. We all got to tell the story from then on. We shared an elevator with Bernie Kosar. And on the elevator ride, aside from awkward awe at this superstar, at least of 1980s Cleveland pro football, the only conversation was one moment when he looks around at the silent, stupefied fans crowded into the elevator with him, and he just says, "You're all Browns fans here?" And that was it. We do that, right? We make room when somebody important wants to share space with us. Then we feel like we've touched glory, that becomes a story I can tell. The time I met Bernie Kosar in an elevator, right? That's a story, because being around that kind of greatness somehow, rubs off on us, we like to imagine. Whether it's a sports star or a celebrity, or now in the age of social media, people who are simply famous for being famous on social media, or politicians or demagogues, anybody else who commands a certain amount of reputation, we have a way of thinking, well, of course, I would make room for that person. They bring a certain amount of prestige. They may bring a certain amount of greatness. They maybe could do something for me somewhere down the road. Sign an autograph, answer my complaint if it's my local legislator, whatever. We have a way of making room for the people we think will do us favors, the people we think are important. And even if I don't quite know what the favor is going to be, just good to know we've rubbed elbows with somebody really, truly important. We have a way of thinking that proximity to other people who are regarded as great makes us a little bit greater as well. It wasn't just a starstruck high schooler in the early 1990s. I think all of us, maybe as human beings, not even just in our age, but throughout history, have operated with something like that idea, that there are certain people who you know are really important, and you want to treat them well, because who knows, they might be able to do something for you later, and you want to be remembered well by them. And if you've rubbed elbows with somebody great in an elevator or at work or just down the street, wherever, maybe some of their greatness has rubbed off on you and made you awfully important as well. We have a way of thinking that, we human beings. And here's the thing. Jesus sees that as running counter to the reign of God that he brings. In fact, Jesus takes that same old thinking, let me tell you about the time I met Bernie Kosar in an elevator, and that makes me a little bit greater, and turns it on its head. Jesus, at about the halfway point in Mark's storytelling in the Gospel of Mark, reveals a big secret, sort of an open secret, to his disciples. When they finally start connecting the dots and calling him the Messiah, the one that had been promised, the anointed one, the chosen one of God that they've all been waiting for all their lives and all their parents and grandparents and great-grandparents' lives, when they finally start connecting the dots and say, "Jesus, you're that Messiah," Jesus immediately stops and says, "Okay, but you all have probably got the wrong picture about what Messiah means. You're thinking Messiah like celebrity or important person sharing the elevator with you, and that when you share an elevator ride with Bernie Kosar, you get to go up along for the ride, riding on his coattails. When you're in the company of somebody great, then you get some of the perks along the way too. You get some of their greatness just sort of by basking around them, their notoriety, their power, their fame, their influence, that kind of thing." Jesus says that's exactly the opposite of what I've come for. In fact, Jesus then goes on to tell them several times that his story, his arc, his way of being God's chosen one isn't to ascend to the throne or raise up an army and fight off the Romans or to command legions of angels in order to impress everybody and wow people into submission and his supernatural power. Jesus says, you're going to hang around with me, be prepared to lose everything, all the notoriety, all the respectability, all the prestige and power. Jesus says, I'm headed toward shame and suffering and being rejected by the respectable religious people and being seen as a threat by the politically powerful in the empire and getting beaten and tortured and stripped and then put to a shameful death, the worst of the worst deaths they used to make a public example, a spectacle out of people on a cross. And then, Jesus says, then rising from the dead through that. Now, the disciples, they can't even get to why resurrection sounds scandalous. They're hung up on, no. Messiah is not supposed to suffer that way. The Messiah is the greatest of the greatest of the great. And they assume that means Messiah will be the king dressed in pomp and ceremony, the one who has other people do the dangerous stuff for him, the one who by sheer military might or glory or power or influence makes things happen by force, the one who gets the easy way because of their greatness, the one everybody else clears room for because, we certainly want to make room for a great person. Jesus says that's not how it works for me, because that's not how God runs things. Sometimes the imagery the Bible uses or Jesus will use is like a kingdom, like an alternative kingdom. Instead of the kingdom of Rome or the kingdom of David or Solomon, it's Yahweh's kingdom, Yahweh's reign, the Yahweh administration, we might say, in a culture and country like ours that doesn't have kings but elected officials in, from time to time, new administrations. Jesus has come to show us the way the Yahweh administration works, or sometimes the way the family of God operates. So, one story in Mark's gospel. They're continuing on this sort of journey that Jesus knows is going to take him toward Jerusalem, toward that cross that's waiting for him. And he tells his disciples again that he calls himself by this title, the Son of Man, as a way of not using the loaded, charged language of Messiah that everybody's going to get the wrong picture of. Jesus says the Son of Man is going to be betrayed and will be rejected and they'll kill him. And then 3 days later will rise from the dead. And his disciples, again, they don't understand any of this. So that they make it to their destination. And when they get to the town they're getting to, Jesus asks his disciples, what were you guys all arguing about on the way? Jesus is no dummy. He knows. He's been listening. He can hear what they've been saying. They've all been arguing about which one of them is the greatest. They are stuck in Bernie Kosar in the elevator thinking that if we're closest to Jesus and Jesus is the Messiah, then we get to rub off on some of his greatness and it'll make us great. Who is going to be the greatest of all of us? Who will command the most power? Who will have the most fame? Who will have the most fortune? Who will sort of be regarded as the greatest among us? And Jesus shames them about this. He says, that's not how it works among us. Whoever wants to be first has to put themselves last of all in the place of servant of all. And if you're all fussy about who's greatest and making room for the celebrity in your midst, you're completely misunderstanding how God's reign works, how the family of God works. So he just happens upon a young child, like an infant, like a toddler, like young, and says, whoever receives a little child like this in my name welcomes me. And whoever welcomes me is welcoming the one who sent me. In other words, God. It blows apart, it turns upside down, it takes inside out the old celebrity in the elevator thinking, right? Celebrity in the elevator thinking is, I'm in the elevator, someone important comes in, I, of course, make room for them because they're important. And maybe some of their greatness will make me a little bit greater too. Maybe they can do me a favor, sign me an autograph, whatever, but I need to be around people who are important seeming because it makes me puffed up too. Jesus says the opposite in the reign of God. You make room for the people who can't do anything for you. You know, like a dog. Let's be honest here. My dog makes no contributions at all to the family household. Right? No income, just eats and requires time and walks and veterinary checkups and all that. Takes most comfortable seats and the most comfortable spots in the beds for that matter too. And yet she belongs, because that's how a household with a dog works, right? Her belonging isn't because of what I get from her, and not because of any kind of greatness, but we just make room for her. There's space, there's welcome for her, because I know she's beloved by everybody else in the family. And so for their sake, dog is welcome on her own terms. Jesus calls us to be the kind of people who create welcome for the ones regarded as nobodies, who can't do any favors for you, who bring nothing but their neediness. I mean, I think that's closer to what Jesus has in mind by taking a really young child and giving this as an example of who you're supposed to welcome. Because we have a way in our culture of treating young children as, oh, they're innocent, they're cute, that kind of thing. In Jesus' world, that's not the immediate reference that people think of when they think of young child. They think of needy and sometimes gross and completely dependent and has no prestige, has no legal rights, isn't basically really a human. When you get older and then you can inherit property, or you can have social standing, then you matter. But a child, that's nobody. You're practically not a real person in the ancient cultures of the Greek and Roman Empire. Jesus says, find the ones who are seen as not important, as can do nothing to you, nothing for you in return. People who have no status, no celebrity, no greatness of any kind. Receive them for my sake, and you're receiving God, no less than God. It's different than, of course I'll make room for the celebrity because he is a celebrity and I want to be seen in the company of celebrity. Jesus says, no, find the people who can do nothing for you, whose autograph doesn't mean anything, who bring nothing but their neediness and their dependency. So a little child may be back in Jesus' day, or a family dog in my house. Somebody who has nothing they can offer you back, and yet receive them the same way you would receive none other than God. That's how we do things in the Yahweh administration. We are not interested in celebrity. We're not interested in the world's kind of greatness. We're called to be the kind of community that simply welcomes people simply because God has sent them across our path, regardless of what anybody can do for us or not. That's a really, really important message. For us as church, it's important. Because sometimes in church life, sometimes the message kind of comes across, well, of course we want to welcome important people. We want to welcome people who are already like us because they can be part of our social club. We want to welcome people who will one day help out the church. They'll be leaders. They'll serve on our church councils. They'll be, big monetary givers. Man, is that the temptation in organized religion, especially in the era of COVID, especially when everybody's worried about institutions surviving and thriving. That's not how it is for us. As the followers of Jesus, we're called to welcome people because God loves them, not for what they can do for us. We're called not to care about greatness on the world's terms. After all, we worship and confess as Lord someone who found the most shameful way to die, who associated with all the wrong people, and who consistently showed love to people regardless of what they could do for him, but entirely because he saw them as people beloved of God and made in the image of God. We're called to be the kind of people who welcome others, not because of what we get out of it, but simply because the party wouldn't be the same without them, because we see them as people who belong in God's family, and we want them to know that there's a place for them at the table. So what that looks like in our daily and weekly life, well, it shows up in 1,000 ways. One is intentionally welcoming people, not just to gather with us on Sunday mornings, but into our lives, opening our lives up to other people and treating people as special and beloved without an angle, without I want to get a favor from you somewhere down the road. Maybe you'll give me a discount when I'm looking to buy some carpet or furniture, or maybe one day you'll come and join my church and you'll help prop up our institution. We're not called to be like that, but the opposite. Find the people that nobody seems to think is important and deliberately welcome them. Receive them and see this is Jesus finding a place among us too. When our congregations do things like helping bring a meal for a homeless family, or when we help to resettle refugees through larger parachurch organizations who are in need of a safe place to live and start over, especially in these days as a number of families who were allies for us in Afghanistan are looking for a new place to start over because it's no longer safe to stay where they had lived before. Or when we help at the local food bank and see neighbors not as people who don't matter, but seeing Jesus in the line looking for tomorrow's meal. That's our calling. And we discover then this amazing, beautiful surprise. Jesus says, whoever welcomes a little child for my sake receives me and receives the one who sent me. In other words, when we deliberately welcome the folks that get treated as nobodies, who get seen as you can't contribute anything important, you must not be great, you must not be valuable. When we receive those people not with pity and condescension, but saying, I'm so glad you've come, you bring something wonderful to the mix, the party wouldn't have been the same without you. When we do that, it turns out no less than Jesus has come to visit among us. That turns everything upside down. Be prepared. Following Jesus is going to keep turning everything upside down. In a culture where everybody's got a story of the celebrity they met or what important influential person they've written to or corresponded with or they once were in the same room with, we're called to be people who find anybody's and everybody's, maybe even the people the world regards as nobodies, and say, welcome, there's a place for you. This isn't about what I can get from you, but simply because the party wouldn't have been the same without you here. There's room at the table for you to join us, because there we discover Jesus is in our midst. Join us on Sunday when we gather at Jesus' table and where we discover in all of Jesus' upside down ways, he's both the guest and the host of the party. See you Sunday.